Colleagues, today's session will be on development goals and public infrastructure. And the objective is to share examples of development goals in the tourism sector of where infrastructural, regulatory, and financial challenges are being addressed. Learn from successful public-private infrastructure development and investment that progress development goals in the tourism sector, and discuss ways in which the tourism sector can meet emerging development challenges and what further action and support is needed. We have online with us Ms. Alice Luthi from IFC. We have also engaged Talanoa Consultancy to support its facilitation. So we have with us Ms. Marita Manley. And we have an expert team of panel with us today who will be sharing with us existing infrastructure plans and development in the tourism sector, what infrastructure development is needed in the tourism space and what are investors saying about it. And we'll be sharing examples of where challenges need addressing in terms of infrastructure. Joining us in the panel today, we have the Permanent Secretary for Ministry of Public Works and Meteorological Services, Mr. Taitusi Vakandru Yada, Ms. Esther Salam, Manager Investment Aftercare and Policy Advocacy of Investment Fiji, Mr. Kamal Prasad, CEO Fiji Roads Authority, Ms. Cynthia Range, General Manager Port Denaro Marina, and Mr. Krishnil Prasad, Manager Special Projects, Energy Fiji Limited. A big vinaka to the panelists for taking out time to share with us your knowledge and experience. Colleagues, please do share with us your thoughts or any questions at the end of this session, or you can put it in the chat box as we go along. Without further ado, I would like to invite the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Public Works and Meteorological Services. He'll be sharing with us the existing infrastructure plans and development in the tourism sector. Thank you, sir, for joining.
Good morning, everyone in the panel. Thank you for providing me the opportunity to be part of these very important discussions on National Sustainable Tourism Framework. I think I've been tasked to speak on tourism and infrastructure in terms of infrastructure, providing that enabling environment for tourism to move ahead. That's what I feel that where the sort of objective of my information that will be shared this morning. Before I do that, I'd just like to sort of give a brief overview of infrastructure in Fiji, just for the team to understand what infrastructure is in Fiji and how things are at the moment and what are the plans going ahead. When you look at the infrastructure in Fiji, it has just recently evolved slowly. Infrastructure was very much sort of rural-based infrastructure. Just recently, in the last 5 to 10 years recently, urbanization of infrastructure has somewhat moved in. We have urban infrastructure and we have rural infrastructure. For the information of the panel of the team that is sitting here this morning, at the moment, the current urban infrastructure, when I say urban infrastructure, I mean electricity, water, and roads is currently under pressure. For example, in the water sector, water is not enough in the Suvarnasori corridor currently because of the recent move from the rural dwellers to the urban areas. So that has sort of put pressure on the urban sector. So roads in the urban sector, water in the urban sector, and even electricity distribution in urban sector has somewhat been pressured because of the increase in the move from the rural sector to the urban sector. So when you look at, for example, roads, for example, there is pressure on Fiji Roads Authority to organize better roads because of the high level of vehicles that have moved in. People have purchased vehicles. As I mentioned, these roads were just recently upgraded from being gravel roads to now urban roads to Tahsil roads. And even speaking of Tahsil roads, there is a need for widening of these roads 4-lane roads or to a freeway, so to speak, so that we can bring that infrastructure level to a more, international standard, high level urban infrastructure. So based on that look in terms of how infrastructure has evolved in Fiji, we see that very much there is a need for improvement on rural infrastructure in order for tourism to come in. Because in order for tourism to thrive, people need to travel, for example. And when they travel in an area, there needs to be proper access, there needs to be proper road crossings in terms of bridges and waterways crossings. These are all part of improvement of rural infrastructure. Electricity needs to be moved to these rural areas. Even water services need to be improved in these areas in order for tourism to go up to very remote areas in Fiji. So the focus has been the focus with the ministry is to organize, while urban infrastructure is being organized, there is also need for people to move back to rural settings to get to social and economic development in these areas. And I think tourism is part of that movement. Just for we at the ministry have been given some targets to work on, both international targets and national targets in the infrastructure area, so that we can accommodate tourism, we can accommodate economic development, we can accommodate agriculture in not only in urban areas but also in rural areas. For example, 100% access to some form of electricity by 2026. So this is a very ambitious target by government to provide some form of electricity by 2026 to all people in Fiji. By 2030, we should have about 20% reduction in carbon emissions from our energy sector. So this calls for renewable energy implementations, especially in areas where we use diesel generators. So alternative sources of energy needs to be coming on board. And these are very ambitious targets. 2026 is just around the corner. By 2031, we should have access to 80% of central sewage systems, wastewater treatments. Just looking at the wastewater sector, for example, we have people that don't have wastewater treatment facilities. Towns that need to have wastewater treatment facilities. We would like to grow some new towns, for example, Numbawalu, or centers that needs to be growing. But when you organize a new town or a new development area, people need to think that there is wastewater that needs to be treated, that will be generated from this area. There is water that needs to be organized in this area, and there is electricity. So the pressure on infrastructure is very enormous, not only from the tourism sector, but from the development perspective in terms of economic development and also for livelihood. Just for your information, the targets that I've just mentioned, this is a moving target. Every two people get married, the next thing they need is a house, and then in that house they need water connection, they need electricity connection, they need access. These are all part and parcel of pressure that is with the Ministry of Public Works and Transport and Meteorological Services. So, starts off the discussions this morning in terms of the infrastructure needs and how things are with the ministry. We've been working very closely with government, central government, in terms of making sure that we meet our targets, and working very closely with Fiji Roads Authority, Water Authority Fiji, and Energy Fiji Limited and Department of Energy, Now we have a new in the new ministry, the transport has now sort of come back to us. That is also a challenge especially in rural transportation. Rural transportation is something that PG needs to organize. When rural transportation is organized, and rural routes needs to be organized to a certain level where tourism can thrive in certain areas. Thank you.
Thank you, PS, sir, for sharing with the infrastructure development work being undertaken currently and the needs of the industry, especially in terms of accessibility to remote areas. Thank you, sir. We also have the Permanent Secretary for Trade, Cooperatives, SMEs, and Tourism with us today to share a few words in this space. PS, sir, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jyoti, and thank you, everyone. And I'd like to thank PS Taitusi also, sir, that you have given your valuable time to us.
Thank
I know you
you.
have to go. But you have really set the scene as far as our discussion today is concerned. So I thank you for providing that oversight. I'd like to also acknowledge everyone that has joined us, including the Honorable Assistant Minister for Tourism and Civil Aviation, Ms. Honorable Bainivalu, all the CEOs that have joined us, FRA CEO, Mr. Prasad, thank you very much. CEO for Port Denarau, thank you, Madam, and Energy Fiji Limited, Investment Fiji, and all our stakeholders. This is our second consultations for the year. We've had about 5 of these meetings. And as you can see, the National Sustainable Tourism Framework is a framework that the ministry is leading its development together with IFC and Talanoa Consultancy. But it is a intensively consultative process because tourism stakeholders are the people of Fiji. And we want to thoroughly consult all the stakeholders and ensure that this is indeed a national document. But in saying that, we do not want to duplicate development plans, infrastructure plans, technical plans of ministries like Ministry of Infrastructure or the National Infrastructure Plan, etc. This is the National Sustainable Tourism Framework. What I envisage will be primarily a policy document and provide a policy framework that will incorporate objectives, missions, visions of other plans that we have, and it will be inconsistent, which is why this round of consultations is going on. And in tourism, I think infrastructure consideration is very, very important. While we go for high value tourists, volume is also important. At some point in time, I think our Honorable Minister has also said that we want to reach to having 1 million tourists per annum. And of course, we'll need room inventory, we'll need connectivity, increased connectivity through our national airlines, but we will also need domestic infrastructure, things that PS Taitusi was talking about as far as connectivity, wastewater treatment, infrastructure such as roads, other infrastructures, and it will put pressure on our infrastructure because ultimately we are a small island developing state with limited infrastructure resources as well as a very fragile natural environment and ecosystem. But let me let me start by sort of wishing everyone here that I have not seen and meeting for the first time, Happy New Year. Some of you I have met, but again, thank you for joining us, those that have joined for the first time. And we will hope to engage with you consistently and constantly, and this is one of the many fews. Your experiences, your opinions, concerns in these webinars are, like I said, integral part of forming the plan. You would sort of this is the work that has been carried out when we were Ministry of Commerce, Trade, Tourism and Transport, but today there is a dedicated Ministry of Tourism and Civil Aviation. And that sort of, again, bodes well for the need to have a tourism development plan, a national sustainable tourism framework. As I said, we will continue to engage with all of you and establish a new roadmap for ourselves for the tourism industry with the new vision. This webinar is part of it. We hope to discuss some good technical issues from the experts itself. So I won't, as I'm not an expert on infrastructure, I won't speak for long. But you would have seen that when our Deputy Prime Minister, Honorable Minister for Tourism, Civil Aviation, Honorable Ngavoka, and the Assistant Minister, Madam Bainivalu, were visiting Nandi and the tourism and aviation stakeholders last week, there was a lot of discussions regarding the national plan. And we had also consulted our colleagues from the hotel industry, from the national airline, of course, and also Fiji airports and a few others. And time and again, infrastructure was raised as a key priority and a key consideration. And going forward, any plan on tourism needs to contain consideration with regards to how infrastructure will cope with the growing tourism industry. So collaboration in this area and consultation in this area is crucial in informing the development goals of the plan and the industry in the next short to medium and to long term. And they say, if you build it, they will come. So, this idea of which comes first, infrastructure or the tourism numbers, I think, that it needs to go concurrently with the industry booming right now. We need to ensure that the infrastructure keeps pace, whether it's air, it's ground handling services at Fiji airports, whether it's port services, whether it's like our hotels and resorts, car rentals, etc. They all play a vital role in our competitiveness as an industry for travel and tourism. And essentially, infrastructure are the arteries of industry that carry the the lifeline, the blood to these places. So having the necessary infrastructure, whether it's hard infrastructure or soft infrastructure, is critical to any sector of the economy. And for tourism, by the very nature, we rely on accessibility to markets within our islands. Spreading the tourism sector and its benefits to parts of Fiji that may not necessarily be sort of not renowned for tourism. So this is a very much focus of the minister as well, the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister. And also this is what PS was talking about as well. So we need airports, we need international quality airports, wharves and jetties, consistent and clear, reliable energy and water. As far as wharves, jetties and connectivity is concerned, we are also partnering with IFC on the Vanua Levu or Northern Development Project. And this is something that this project has a budget of 42 million US, and this will also sort of again close the gaps in some of the infrastructure, vital necessary infrastructure that needs to be established in the north as well. So colleagues, this requires a very high element of partnership between all the government agencies and of course the private sector, the private players in the industry, and also our development partners like IFC and others. And so this is something that we will be constantly sort of calling upon and raising as a theme. Even our National Sustainable Tourism Framework will have an element where this triple P, public-private partnership, and also partnership with our donors will be quite emphasized, because government alone will not be able to achieve all the strategies that we want to that is envisaged to be contained in the plan. You would need no reminders, colleagues, that in terms of recovery, we have successfully received 636,312 visitors in last year, which is 71% of pre-COVID level, 2019 level, which was a record year in itself. This means that we have exceeded all expectations of a recovery, and whatever our target was in 2022, this has been surpassed. And for all sort of indications that we've received from our national airline and of course our hotels, 2023 will be another one of those record-setting years for tourism as well. Everything is going well for tourism. So, you know, there's a saying that if it's don't fix it if it's not broke. So, but again, with this plan, we are not trying to sort of interfere in what the private sector is doing and sort of change the direction of Fijian tourism. What we want to do is spread the benefits more, have more local content, have a sustainability focus towards our industry, and ensure that tourism lasts for the long term. The products that we market as far as Fijian tourism is concerned, under the brand Happiness, is a diversified product. Fiji is seen as a diversified destination, and from an aspirational, the last time I spoke to you, from an aspirational to an inspirational one, where there's more to do than just enjoying our beautiful beaches in beautiful resorts. And there's more to do than just enjoying the coastal aspects of our tourism. And of course, we all know as Fijian citizens, the beauty of our country. It's about time that we also let our tourists know and enjoy this product. This is why we are embarking on a new sector plan, the National Sustainable Tourism Framework. We want the framework to be our blueprint for the next 10 years. That's why infrastructure consideration is very important. It's not a development master plan. Other ministries like Ministry of Infrastructure and Ministry of Local Government are working on development city master plans, etc., city schemes, etc. But it will give us a common purpose, common goals and strategies, consistent strategies that will be workable and that will be achievable. In terms of infrastructure, very quickly, colleagues, we want the framework to guide us on what our immediate needs are. So ultimately, the framework will guide policymakers, investors, and development partners on things I have talked about already, dispersing the tourism benefit to other destinations that have potential outside of the traditional sort of Nandi Coral Coast region, ease some pressures on our critical infrastructure and utilities. So, you know, ensure that the infrastructure caters for the growth in numbers, and some of the destinations could receive double the number of visitors they used to receive in the next 3 to 4 years. So is there adequate sort of, again, utilities, provision, waste management, solid waste management, wastewater management, etc., and connectivity to cater for the demand? We also want to connect niche areas and niche industries like super yachts, sports tourism. So then those type of infrastructures come into focus. Whether we have sort of world-class sporting facilities, whether we have cruise terminals for yachts, etc., other sort of infrastructure needs that those stakeholders need. We also want to focus through infrastructure on community-based tourism. So in terms of promoting more local content in remote areas, and it's proven to be a growing market. How do we tap that? How do we, again, the chicken and the egg situation, how do we get infrastructure in those areas? We start with the basic infrastructure, whether it's electrification, whether it's extension of national grid, and not just for residential purposes, but for commercial purposes as well. Often we know that the national grid is present in an area, but if we want investments to take place, then it becomes a barrier because there's no 3-phase, 4-phase power. And then getting those type of substation infrastructure becomes quite costly for the investor. So we need to look at that. And we will work closely with PS for Public Works and Transport to ensure that those growth areas also receive the attention as far as infrastructure development is concerned. And then finally, I'd like to mention that the infrastructure needs to be climate resilient. We know that we are highly vulnerable to natural disasters, and it's not enough to just have available infrastructure. The infrastructure that we establish or build needs to be climate resilient. And so for that, in that endeavor, we are looking at things like building code and having cyclone category 5 certification. Also building materials, we are trying to upgrade standards to standards that are based on Australia and New Zealand, but more sort of climatized to our geography. And we know that cyclones, floods, etc., natural disasters can play havoc on tourism infrastructure and the tourism sector. So we need to be mindful of that as we develop these. So these are some of the critical considerations and ideas and suggestions and inputs that we want to hear from you. And through this webinar platform, we aim to look at these examples of development goals in the tourism sector and the associated infrastructure, regulatory and financial needs that we encounter as we grow our tourism sector. We want to sort of talk about this with you, learn from you, and implement successful private-public investments and ways in which we can sort of future-proof our industry, ensure that the growth is sustainable and in line with the infrastructure development of the country. So with those few words, colleagues, I'll pass it back to the moderator, but I really I want to thank you for giving your time, and also for PS to for giving his time. I don't know whether he's still online. He is. Thank you very much, PS, for you being here, and all the CEOs and experts that are here. So thank you very much. Jyoti, over to you.
Thank you, PS. Colleagues, PS has mentioned, this webinar sessions has been organized to get your contribution towards the development of the 10-year Sustainable Tourism Framework. So we look forward to your feedbacks. At the end of this session, we'll be having the Q&A session. And in the meantime, please share your views in the chat box. Please joining us next is Ms. Esther Salem, Manager Investment Aftercare and Policy Advocacy from Investment Fiji. She has more than 10 years experience working for Investment Fiji, mainly focused on facilitating assistance for tourism projects in Fiji. And she will be discussing what infrastructural development is needed in the tourism sector and what are the investors saying. Thank you, Ms. Salem.
Naka Jyoti, Bulivinaka everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to just acknowledge the presence of our Honorable Assistant Minister for Tourism, Mrs. Bainivalu, together with PS for Public Works and Transport, and also to PS, Mr. Ali. Thank you very much. Thank you to the team from IFC and also Ministry of Tourism for the invitation extended to the team here at Investment Fiji to be part of this webinar. I think this is very important. It's also a good chance that we be able to discuss challenges and issues, especially where we at Investment Fiji continuously facilitate and assist investors with their projects. Just to start off the discussion, I'd just like to give a brief overview of Investment Fiji for those participants that are joining us, if you may not be aware. So Investment Fiji is actually a statutory body of the Fiji government. And as of the 1st of August, 2022, we have now become or have transitioned ourselves to become a fully fledged investment promotion agency. And our mandates is to promote investment, trade, and provide services for facilitation and aftercare assistance. And this is more so towards our investors, both foreign and local. This also saw the introduction of the new Investment Act of 2021, together with the Investment Fiji Act of 2022, together with subsequent regulations that came with it. So part of the discussions, and I also agree with what PS Infrastructure together with PS Tourism had highlighted before, Investment Fiji developed a strategic plan, and we identified the tourism sector as an important sector to promote Fiji's competitive advantage. And some of the investment opportunities that were seen to be high priority for the sector were upper-end hotels and resorts, adventure tourism, sports tourism, ecotourism accommodation, medical tourism, and education tourism. But with these opportunities for promotion, there is provisions for infrastructure to play an important role. So what infrastructure development is required in the tourism sector, as well as some investor perspective on this infrastructure development. So Investment Fiji has worked with the private sector to identify strategic and operational challenges that the tourism industry face. Most of the operational challenges are usually related to government process approvals, which Investment Fiji has been able to facilitate. And these are mostly related to delays in approval processes. And that in turn, we try to enhance and build stakeholder relationships with our government departments. However, for the specific strategic challenges that we've identified mostly for the tourism industry, one such challenge is the improvement of the infrastructure for the airport facility. And primary focus would be towards the Savu and Taveuni airports. A lot of our feedback, a lot of the consultation that Investment Fiji has engaged with, most of our tourism operators in the north have always provided their feedback and views on the airport infrastructure. So we would recommend that these airport facilities be improved and upgraded to the standard where guests and tourists will experience the same excitement of traveling once they've landed at the Nandi International Airport. And one such example that has been shared among our team is really how guests have their experiences once they land at the Nandi Airport, and then they've had to wait for a few hours before they take a twin auto plane, and then they travel to their destination, and upon arriving, they're welcomed with just an open space. There's no waiting area. There's no facility of convenience or facilities for coffee, drinks, or food. And then having to travel by road to their destination. So in this regard, these are just some of the feedbacks. This is really the views that have been expressed by a lot of our tourism developers in the north. I specifically pick the north because a lot of our tourism operators in Savu and Taveuni have actually mentioned this, have actually provided their feedback in regards to these issues and challenges that they face. From the investor experience, usually the process of setting up tourism projects has always been difficult due to transportation, logistic issues caused to lack of the infrastructure for shipment and supply of building and construction materials. There's no proper port facility, the high cost of having to cater for this, and even for barge transport for goods and materials for tourism that are located in the remote areas and in the islands. Also, there's also the level of difficulty to access remote areas by road. So from the team that have usually traveled frequently up north, to conduct site inspections. This has been one of the most challenging issues arising, especially when investors have highlighted their concerns about this difficulty in accessing locations for their projects. Challenges can also be linked to EFL, just as PS Infrastructure and also PS Tourism have highlighted. The issue of high connection cost. Developers are facing difficulties with connecting to the grid, and also to bear the cost to develop a lot of their projects. They also have to bear the cost of getting transformers for their projects. Water and sewage connections, that's also an issue that's been raised. And because of, again, how remote these areas are, there's not much support provided to allow that connectivity to develop. And with that, because of the difficulty to develop such projects in these areas, infrastructure has always been one of the main challenges. From Investment Fiji, in order to improve the investment environment for tourism specifically, Investment Fiji has worked and is working with stakeholders to identify and work on certain initiatives with the private and public sector, making recommendations, and that's through policy reforms, another mandate that we've taken on board as an IPA to create a better investment climate for Fiji. And some of these examples would be the tax-free incentives, streamlining of processes, aligning inconsistent policy. Other initiatives would be now we would look at revamping the Investment Facilitation Committee in the North, the West, the Central Division, working more closely with divisional commissioners to identify strategies to increase sustainable investment in Fiji. Conducting more research into areas of improvement and engaging with more international partners, the introduction of a digital platform that we have on board, which is the Biz Fiji 2.0. It's the online process approval that Investment Fiji is working with the ministry and with Digital Fiji. For tourism goals, Investment Fiji would recommend, yes, more activities. And these activities could be related to music festivals, cultural tours, cultural festivals, focusing more on our multi-ethnic culture. I think when we discussed about what we would share on this webinar is we should take advantage of what we already have. And that would also go in line with our natural resources. River safari tours. Right now, we're only aware that 2 companies currently operate in Fiji for river safaris. We have 2 companies that actually operate floating pontoons, and development of historical tours, and even mountain bike track. Just recently, we've received an interest, an investment opportunity that we are currently engaged with this investor for discussion to set up this mountain bike track project. And the reason why we're using this example is because mountain bike track is a Commonwealth and Olympic sport. And if we can take advantage of opportunities in these activities, in these areas, I believe that it could actually result in a lot more tourism growth for Fiji as a country. The reason also we highlighted these activities is due to the report by the World Trade and Tourism Council in November 2021, where they actually provided a report for trending in travel, emerging consumer trends in travel and tourism in 2021 and beyond. So the report highlighted how the market changed pre-COVID and post-COVID, and the consumer expenditure in terms of travel, and the most important or prominent destinations for travel. One such section of that report that was highlighted is the distinction of the travelers, the millenniums and the generational Zs. And that actually show the willingness of travel between these 2 generations. So the report highlighted for Generation Z, they have actually they've done the study and survey of the top attractions for 2021 that the generational Zs actually travel to which countries that provide these top attractions. So really the activities that we've highlighted before, what target market we could focus on, what tourists or guests that we'd like to receive to the country, where we could create more opportunities to enhance our tourism sector, and where we as Investment Fiji, not only in the space of investment promotion, how we can be able to facilitate, to encourage more investments in these sectors, in these subsectors, and in these activities can create more opportunities, more employment opportunities for Fijians. So with that, I'd like to just conclude that apart from the promotions that we're undertaking for the tourism sector, we're also working on addressing strategic challenges, and those are strategic challenges related mainly to the infrastructure, more specifically towards EFL and water, faced by what investors have actually provided as some of the difficulties that they've had towards their project setups. But this is just not a one army approach. It's really what Investment Fiji is doing to work together with other government stakeholders, building that relationship, seeing how best we can improve the investment climate in Fiji. So with that, that concludes my brief presentation today. And if there's any questions, I believe we'll have the session at the end of this session. Thank you very much. Thank you. Over to you, Jyoti.
Thank you, Ms. Salam, for sharing the investors' views and experiences for the areas of improvement and the infrastructure requirement. Thank you very much. I understand that EFL can only join us briefly, so let me quickly, if Mr. Krishnil Prasad is online before we move on to Fiji Roads Authority. Mr. Krishnil. I believe he's not online at the moment. So our next speaker, I guess we'll move on to Fiji Roads Authority. Mr. Kamal Prasad, CEO, Fiji Roads Authority. He's a civil engineer by profession. Mr. Prasad attained his diploma in civil engineering from the Fiji Institute of Technology, and thereon went on to attain military engineer design and military engineer construction qualifications at the Royal School of Military Engineering in England. He has approximately 20 years of local and international industry experience in construction, design, geotechnical investigation, environmental assessment, contract management, asset management, traffic management, project management, and disaster management of civil and structural infrastructure projects. He also serves as a board director with Land Transport Authority and Fiji Ports Terminal. Mr. Prasad will be sharing with you some good examples of where challenges need addressing for infrastructure needs and in the tourism and tourism support sectors. Thank you, CEO, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Jyoti. That was a very long introduction. Thank you for that. Listening to PS Ali and PS Taitusi regarding the infrastructure that needs that and from Investment Fiji. For FRA, the direct thing at the moment is to look after what we've got. That is the main effort, as you'll speak, will say the main effort for FRA is to look after the existing infrastructure. Because without these roads being in safe condition, I don't think so tourists will want to come to us. So this is something that we have taken on in terms of not just for the tourists, but it's also the people of Fiji to make our existing infrastructure good enough for the traverse between from the interior coming out onto the urban roads. Just some statistics I would like to put in here before we go into the rest of things is we've got 6,400 kilometers of road that FRA looks after. And there is another about 5,000 kilometers of road that is outside FRA. These belong to pine roads, cane roads, cane access roads, treks to farmlands. So those roads are not looked after by FRA. But there is 6,400 kilometers, which is mainly arterials and collector roads. Of that 6,400, we've got 1,800 kilometers of road is seal road. So we got tar seal on it. And the remainder, 4,800, is still unsealed. So considering the resilient infrastructure we need to have the tourists, to have the thing safe for anybody to travel, there's a lot of work that's required and a lot of investment. And in road infrastructure, it's just the government that's doing the investment. And then when we're talking about public-private partnership, it becomes a difficult thing to improve the existing infrastructure at the moment, considering the number of people we have in Fiji is less than 1 million, so not many people use. There is not many users who can pay to develop roads to, let's say, 4-lane roads with high speed at the moment. But I believe that's maybe in 15, 20 years, we should be there. But to deal with the tourism sector and all the good stuff, as I had mentioned, taking the tourists into the interior, where they, and also what PS Shane had said, that the tourists have just seen our coastal. Let's take them up into the mountains and those valleys where there is some other things for tourists to see. And to do that, we have already got plans, but this plan is for the people of Fiji, but equally it will support the tourism sector in terms of our seal extension programs and replacement of bridges and crossings, because we need bridges and crossings that are resilient to flood inundation. So that is the plan that we've got now, to look after our existing infrastructure. And there's a lot of, we are creating our own strategic plan in terms of our planning and design for future projects. Currently, we are spending around $400 million per year on our projects. And that's how much of improvements that are happening. But it's both ways. It's maintenance and new roads we're building. But putting together new roads, that is, we will stop on putting together new roads, but we will continue with improving our existing infrastructure and replacing our existing bridges, bridges and crossings. So from our side at FRA, that is what we are doing in terms of our side to support the tourism sector. There is one part there, as I was mentioning about the investors coming in and they're going up to the highlands of and many of times we've been asked that we should, FRA should build a road to the locations where the investor wants to put his investment in terms of a hotel or something. So I think at the moment there is no plans at FRA to be building roads to that. But I believe if the framework comes in, then there will be something placed in our strategic plan to be assisting the industry in that way. But all in all, it's us at the moment making sure that the existing infrastructure we've got is able to support the people of Fiji plus the tourists that come in. So that's everything in a nutshell. Any questions that come through, happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Prasad, for sharing FRA's plans and improvements to existing structure for the tourism sector. We now have Mr. Kiflin Prasad, Manager Special Projects, Energy Fiji Limited. Mr. Prasad joined EFL in 2009 and has served in engineering and middle management roles before taking up the role of General Manager Special Projects in October 2021. Mr. Prasad holds a Bachelor of Engineering in Electrical and Computer Engineering from the University of Canterbury, New Zealand, and is a member of the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, USA. Mr. Prasad would be sharing with some examples of challenges that need addressing in terms of EFL. Thank you, Mr. Prasad, for joining us.
Thank you, Jyotishna, and good morning to the panel and to all the participants and the viewers. I think firstly, on behalf of EFL, thank you very much for allowing us to participate in this, or extending an invitation to us, So just a little bit of background about EFL. Energy Fiji Limited, as you know, is a company that transitioned from Fiji Electricity Authority to EFL in April 2018. The Fiji Electricity Authority was actually formed in 1966, in 2018, the Fijian government divested part of Fiji Electricity Authority, and it then became a company. So at the moment, we have, we can say, thousands of shareholders with two large shareholders. One is the Fijian government, which owns 51% stake. The other is a Japanese consortium, a company 7 Specific Pte Limited, which is based in Singapore, but is made up of the Japan Bank for International Cooperation and a utility, the Chugoku Electric Power Company from Hiroshima. So these two make up the 7 Specific Pte Limited, which owns a 44% stake in EFL. The remaining 5% is owned by domestic customers. So we have more than, we can say, we have more than 150,000 domestic customers, who, and most of them have a stake in EFL. So EFL, we operate on 4 main islands. That's Vitilevu, Vanuatu, Ovalau, and Taveuni. On Taveuni, we have been there for just 6 years, since 2017. EFL's, we can say, the vision is to actually to provide clean energy solutions for Fiji using renewable sources, and the target that we have is by 2036 we would want to go to 90% renewable energy. Key challenges that we face now, I think one is in terms of the transition towards renewable energy and the expectation. Two, we can say, is capacity. So post-COVID, what we have noticed is there's a lot of activity, economic activity, and as a result, there is a huge demand for power supply. So what we see in the short term is that there is going to be a big demand for power, and in the long term, this will continue. But overall, we can say the growth rate will come down and level out maybe beyond 2027, 2028. So in the next 4 to 5 years, we see a big demand in electricity. That is as a lot of delayed or stalled investments due to COVID kick off and they materialize. So having the capacity to meet the demand is one. The next, I think, is a lot of customers, especially commercial customers, and a lot of our customers, especially hotels and tourism industry operators in the Western area, complain about is power outages. So that is a result of EFL's network being predominantly radial. So radial means that we do not have a number of redundancies. So if one segment of the network is out, then there is no other way to actually meet the demand. So until that faulted or a faulty segment is repaired and restored into service, then only we are able to provide the service back to customers. So building redundancy into the network. So that is, we can say, our second objective that we are currently working on, and that is a challenge because it requires one, significant investment, and two, time in terms of getting the plan executed. So these we can say are two key challenges that we face as far as meeting customer expectation and demand are concerned. In the next, we can say, as in terms of transitioning towards renewable energy, we can understand that there is one of the sustainable development goals is that we gradually want to move away from the fossil fuel-based power generation technologies, and we have got a plan that will allow us to actually go there. But the diesel-based power stations right now in all the 4 islands that we operate in would likely be in service for a number of years, because one, we can say the investment required to develop renewable energy power plants is huge, and it's going to be spread over a number of years. The magnitude of work that is on sand is also going to be spread over a number of years, and the resource that's required to actually harness, So basically, I mean, in Fiji, we are very fortunate that we have the Monasabu hydroelectric scheme, which has allowed us to keep the electricity tariff low. But as we move into, we can say, other generation technologies like solar or wind, we will see that gradually the adoption of these technologies and the cost of producing energy from these technologies are likely to change. So it's the customers whom we want to ultimately benefit. We do not want them to be burdened by the high costs. So the transition is going to be, we can say, gradual, as the cost of producing energy from these technologies gradually comes down, so that they become affordable for a developing nation like Fiji. So I think in EFL's long-term plan, we can say that the key objectives that we are trying to address is one, capacity, two, a transition away from fossil fuel-based generation, and three, having the redundancies in the systems and the networks that will allow us to, we can say, save the customers better and reduce the number of outages and the duration of the outages that customers actually experience because of having a predominantly radial system, So in a nutshell, I think these are the key objectives that we are targeting towards actually achieving or aligning our plans to actually meet. Now I think I will just we can say end it there, and what I will maybe request is if there are any specific questions or queries around what EFL can do or what EFL needs to do.
Thank you, Ms. Prasad. We will look into the questions in the second part of this session. Thank you very much for your contribution in terms of the challenges faced by EFL and how the organization is trying to address these challenges. For the questions, we will have look at the questions directed at EFL at the end of this session and address it to you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Our final panelist for the day is Ms. Cynthia Resch, General Manager, Port Denarau Marina. Ms. Cynthia spent many years in telecommunication industry in sales, corporate care, and as a regional manager for Digicel before joining Port Denarau Marina in 2011 as a business manager. During this time, she has completed the intermediate and advanced marine management courses in Australia, as well as Fiji's Leadership Development Program. She is currently studying a postgraduate certificate in business management at the University of Fiji. Ms. Cynthia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate all the panelists. I hear a lot about infrastructure. I also, just so for everyone's information, I'm actually the Chief Executive Officer of Port Denarau Marina since the past number of years, and I've been in this industry since about 12 years now. So gaining a lot of experience internationally and locally on what the maritime and the yachting industry has to offer. During this time, I've also actually been the chair of the Yachting and Maritime Subcommittee with Fiji Hotel Tourism Association. So I'm driving from those and being able to hopefully impart some lessons learned and talk about various segments in the yachting industry and the maritime industry. So before I go boring everybody about the details, I think I'll just jump right into it and talk to you about three different segments. One is the cruise ship market, which we are very closely affiliated with and work together with on a regular basis, and also see cruise ship visits in our marina. We're seeing around about 13 this year. One of the things that I have noticed in the cruise ship market is basically there's lots of potential. The demographics of the way the cruise ship market operates also has changed over time, especially now coming out from COVID. Or I hope we're out of COVID. One of the things that I have noticed is that port connectivity is a large factor, especially for us where we don't have deep harbor. So just driving from our experiences in Denmark side, I suppose I'll touch not on the, I'll talk about the lower hanging fruit, which is very easy to achieve, and try to be able to probably tick a lot of these things, because there's some high level infrastructure and title and restrictions and marketing that is more, will require more time. But there's a lot of things that can be done fairly quickly and fairly easy. In cruise ship markets, the recreational activities are what actually drives the experience and the destination. And there are numerous recreational activities that actually attract the customers that are coming. And it's just looking at what the last year and this year, what the response has been from the visiting markets is that they are looking for activities such as theme park, wildlife parks. They're looking at sailing, shopping, recreational boating, zip lining. They want to go to desired ports that have sort of like a one-stop shop, or to destinations that provide that excitement, the pleasure, the joy, the amusement, the fun for tourists. They are no longer, they want the authentic experience, and that's what they are all going for. One of the things that I have noticed is that we have lots of outside ports that need a lot more infrastructure development and a little bit more management. The shore and the land, shore and waterside support don't actually coordinate a lot together. And I see that firsthand when I'm talking to them. The marketing does something else. Everyone's working in silos, which is a problem here in Fiji. There's not much collaboration, public, private, private, private. Either way you look at it, it's people are not talking. People are just keeping things to themselves. Imagine how much we could achieve if we all actually put together thoughts and tried to, work together to try to build up industries. Simple things like the rural to urban drift that we are seeing. If we were to have programs out on the outer islands, where Kandavo, all the other, more Dratambo and all of these, where there is an interest, their Levuka, we can harness that by training the younger generation to be able to give tour guide, eco services, being able to do different experiential offerings, which will help them build businesses, which will help them actually be able to contribute. They don't need to come and, come to the mainland and be able to establish businesses. So financial literacy programs, being able to build on their skill set and having, voluntary arms or schools that could help them achieve to become entrepreneurs. I think this is a very low hanging fruit that we haven't really, or maybe there has been talks about it, but once again, the silos, where do you get that information? Is there a centralized area where you can be able to drive? You want to do business in Fiji. Ease of doing business in Fiji is not easy. Investment Fiji has touched on it. I know businesses that are trying to even open a business and they can't even open a bank account until they've been in the country for at least 6 months. That's ridiculous. E-commerce, we're still fighting through with the digitalized Fiji branding, but we can't even get somebody to have an AFPOS as soon as they open a shop. So things like that, these are very low hanging fruits. We just need the collaborations. We need the right partnerships to be able to talk to the smaller, lower levels and be able to bring that up, and the grassroots will then develop. So stop that, rural to urban drift, and try to harness whatever we've got, the authentic experiences, the real Fiji. The new crowd aren't, I'm looking out of my window half the time when the cruise ships come in, and these are not your older generation. There's a mix now, and they want to experience things. They want to see new things. And to make us lucrative in this market, we should be able to look at what is easily offerable. How can we make it easy for our people? How do we build our people to be able to start their own businesses, effectively, farming. This is yachting as well. So yachting actually goes out to outer islands and are able to look for, where do we have the experiences? Do you have mechas? Do you have art? Do you have, eco tours up on the hilltops? Do you have anything else that you could offer to us? Build that experience, sell it to them, market together with the land and the waterside support, talk to the agencies that are working together, marketing those cruise ships to come to our destination and be able to build on that. So that's just a very low hanging fruit that I think about in terms of the cruise ship market. Then I'll move on to maritime. The maritime market, which is basically your ferry services. We have about 60, 70 odd local ferry services out of the marina here. And one of the, they also have the same ease of doing business issues, surveys, being able to get your certifications on time, being able to have your insurances on time. These have all flow on effect. Why can we not be able to have a functioning body, to say, this is the steps, this is the checklist, this is how we are able to achieve, you have a vessel, your vessel is registered, your vessel needs to be surveyed, your vessel has this time to be able to get your certification for your people and be able to drive that through and be able to give those checklists, and FNU and FMA and the rest of them are able to follow through and deliver. And this is where the communication breakdown is. This is where the private public engagement is disconnected, and something needs to be done. One of the things, and I travel extensively, I see a lot of marinas all over the world. I've been doing this for a number of years now. And one of the things that I've noticed is the opportunity to actually build up on a boating school, for instance. FNU does vocational training. It could be something that you can build on in terms of example, and I've thought about this many times. It boggles me that LTA, for instance, is a regulatory body and has driving schools that teach people how to drive. Why can't we have a boating school that teaches people how to boat, teaches people to build a career on it, teaches, and that becomes a investment. This becomes a business that runs on its own and has regulatory bodies actually coming through and then giving the necessary qualifications, certificates, and compliance. It's just there's no collaboration. There's lots of red tape. There's lots of bureaucracy. There's lots of, every time you put up an idea, first thing is, it's going to be very difficult. And why is that the case? We want to foster enabling, to build up entrepreneurs. We want to be able to have businesses flourish in Fiji. We want the economy to flourish, but the ideas are not being taken or it gets shut down on the get-go. So it's just one thing that I've noticed from my perspective in the marina, that this is in the ferry service, especially with regulatory bodies, we're struggling. You talk to Maritime Safety Authority, you talk to FMA, they all work in silos. Why are they not collaborating? Why are they not having partnerships? Where's the call to action when they sit together and have a meeting and be able to contribute and say, okay, this is what we are going to achieve. This is the timelines. Who's taking responsibility of it? Who's going to drive it? I don't see that. And I sit in many panels and many meetings. And the reason I'm here is because I believe I can add value and give some ideas where we should be able to, improve on what we've got right now in the offering. And so, have the appropriate channels open for industries to grow. Show them where you can find the information. There's no centralized information in Fiji. You have to basically go on a wild goose chase looking for information. Who do I talk to? Here's a checklist. The checklist changes at whim at different people. So, the information sharing, the consistency in information, the continuity in government in terms of the public information. If there is no continuation, you are repeating yourself all over again to new people, and then you have to, in wasting time, your business doesn't go forward. You are stuck, and that stifles growth. And so that's just a bit on the maritime or ferry services that I have seen. And this is, once again, one of the lower hanging fruits, one of those things that are constantly brought up to us, and I'm asked for assistance, and I go out and talk to Fiji Hotel Tourism Association and the rest of them and see how we can collaborate. Then I want to touch on the yachting and super yacht sector. Now, this is a success story. During COVID, we were the only tourism industry that actually kept this going. And there were approximately so we see around about 700 boats. This is equates to around about 2,000 people coming in a boat, in a yachting or super yacht in a year. They spend an average of 120 to 130 days in Fiji. And they contribute in excess of about $60 million to the Fiji economy in a year. This is low impact and a very high yielding industry. It goes out to the outer islands, it contributes in excess of, they don't sit in the hubs, they don't sit in a marina all the time. They actually take their money out. They contribute, they assist in community, post-disaster recovery. They assisted in vaccination drives. They assisted in getting out water makers, etc. Whenever we've had cyclones, etc. They have done so much more that is, it's actually mind-blowing. It's amazing. There's a study out there if anyone wants to read through it. It's independently done in 2019. I, as a marina, I have been trying to get our marina to the next level. We are internationally and locally recognized. Since 2017, I've been knocking the doors of Fiji government, trying to get a permit to run a commercial marina, which actually should be part of my leasing requirements. And I have knocked on doors. I'm trying to expand the marina to be able to offer the services. We've got a demand and supply issue at this moment. In 2019, I had vessels on a wait list. There's a demand in Fiji. I'm marketing it, we're pushing it, and we cannot supply it because the regulatory red tape doesn't allow us to do things that should normally be part of our leasing requirement as a commercial port. Everyone has heard of the Suez Canal and what happened there with a blockage of port. Right now, I can't even dredge my port because I don't have a permit from the government. And I've just knocked doors again last week and I have not heard anything back. The collaboration within the private and public sector, it's not there. You have to go and repeat yourself over and over again. You have, for us in the West, it's even worse. If you're not sitting in Suva outside a door of a ministry, they don't listen to you. They don't respond to your emails. They don't respond to your phone calls. You're stuck. So you effectively have to either hire a consultant, which you pay hundreds and thousands of dollars to actually be able to listen to you. And you're spending that money for what? Something that should already be part of your processes. So the yachting and super yacht industry has a lot to offer. It's a growth industry. The legislation needs to change from the government. There has to be assistance in regards to understanding what this industry is about. It's lucrative. If any one of you have heard, you've heard about Kokomo, you've heard about Google. The success story here is they actually started a journey in our marina. Each one of them made their home port in Port General Marina when they initially came to Fiji. They stayed here for years and years, kept returning back. And now you've seen they have invested in Fiji. So it's the flow-on effect. It's not that they just come in, they see Fiji, they bring their friends in, they're rich, and they do whatever. They have now invested in Fiji. Kokomo's built an empire. And that fruit we are all actually enjoying at the moment in terms of marketing, in terms of what wonderful things Fiji's doing. But that's driven from a industry that nobody quite really sees. And there's more potential. We are hearing on a regular basis how people want to invest more, but they are stifled because it takes too long. The red tape's too much. The information is not readily available, and it's really, really difficult for them to push ahead unless and until you have exorbitant amounts of money to throw in to be able to get somebody to actually follow it through. Infrastructure is a large one for us as well. Yes, I think everyone's talked about utilities, being able to, consistent infrastructure, utilities, provisioning, waste management. This is an overall government problem. It's an overall overarching country problem that we need to resolve. And it's going to take us time, but it will only be possible if we collaborate and we talk to each other. Public-private sector engagement has to be on a constant basis. There should be a call to action when something is done. There should be an accountability of what's happening, and there should be a timeline when things are done. And having the right set of people to be able to communicate this and to be able to drive some of these actions helps. So, having people just to sit down and have a Talanoa session, yes, it helps. It gives you your brainstorm, it gives you ideas. But at the end of the day, who's calling it to action? Who's actually making it accountable? And that's one of the things I've seen over the course of the decade that I've been in this industry, that it actually doesn't see anything through. We've checked a box, we've done this, we've had a conversation, and that's it. This is, this is what it is. So yeah, just wrapping up basically is, I think there is a need to enumerate the benefits of investing in infrastructure and fostering alliances with bodies such as MCTTT and Tourism Fiji. Working in silos is not working. We need collaboration and sharing of ideas. The involvement of stakeholders is very, very important, and to call to action for targets that are set with responsible parties assigned for streamlining processes and for alignment of policies. And I think most of this has already been mentioned all throughout. So that's just my take at it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Cynthia, for sharing your views and the importance for expansion and where future segments of the market that we are currently aren't catering in terms of infrastructure and regulatory requirements, also noting the collaboration between private and public sector. Thank you so much for joining us today. I guess we have come to the end of part one of our session, and we will be moving on to the Q&A session. And my co-facilitators, IFC and Talana Consultancy, will now take us through the Q&A session. Thank you.
Nakajoti. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the panelists for all that the great presentations. We have about 40 minutes for Q&A. We have quite a lot of activity on the chat box, so we'll get right into it. I'll probably start with, sorry, before that, I'd just like to just reiterate, our panelists from EFL had to leave, but we will be connecting those that had specific questions for him via email after this webinar. Okay. Can I just get Carl Probert, to just pose your questions and probably just speak on the two main questions or comments that you wanted to pose, and who are the panelists that you want to address?
I guess this is just from Ministry Investment Fiji, and as you know, the comments from General, you know, the issues around having a consolidated plan, a one-stop shop to solve all of these issues. You know, like if I think if we sat down and came up with a proper master plan, national master plan, so that everybody, even the general public, can see what the whole future looks like. I mean, you'd get immediate buy-in from everybody. I mean, the government wouldn't have to shoulder all the cost of development. You know, if you make the whole place appealing and everybody knows that this is where it's all headed, it doesn't have to be set in stone. But if it can just all work together, I mean, then you can immediately get feedback from people to see what probably works, what doesn't, what issues you might face. But at the moment, you know, every time we have one of these presentations, we have like Cynthia was saying, in silos, various plans, initiatives about what's happening, but you know, we can't see how it all fits together, and it becomes very frustrating. You know, I don't think there's been any significant waterfront development in the whole country since either the reclamation of in Walu Bay or in Lautoka. This is beside Port Denarau, but you can see, like at each of those points was a massive sort of growth opportunity for Fiji. You know, when Walu Bay waterfront was done, the Lautoka waterfront was done, and then obviously Port Denarau. And for some reason, we've just stopped. There's nothing happening. You see how successful the small Bunda Marina is, and it's in such a small footprint. Like, why is there not more effort put into planning and developing the waterfront? I mean, if that's all we did, you'd probably solve most of the problems that you're facing at the moment. You'd get investment, you'd be able to decentralize a lot of these urban centers. You'd solve some of this rural urban drift, because you'd have better accessibility to some of the outer island areas, because it's not all concentrated in Suva or Lautoka. I mean, you just make the whole of Fiji a lot more appealing. And I think that's a huge part of the solution. So, you know, if there's anything I'd implore us all to do is to try and come up with some sort of master plan that cuts across. I mean, I think I've lost count of the number of policies, initiatives, everything. I can't even keep up. So like, nobody else has any hope really. Like no investor, not even anyone that goes overseas to work, whether it's, you know, for rugby or for professional work or anything, and they're all dying to invest back in Fiji, but there's nothing that they can see of where the value will be. You know, create that value, and I think you'll solve a lot of your issues. So yeah, that's my main comment. And the other one is just, we've got to solve the Department of Environment issue. I don't see how any of this moves forward without us solving that issue. You know, like absolutely everything stops right there and is stuck right there. We go to so many of these meetings and there's no attendance. And it's not even worth having a conversation without them being part of it and us finding a solution. Because, you know, without addressing that, it's just all talk. Nobody likes an unknown timeline. And frankly, you know, the way the Department of Environment is set up right now, that's all you can offer. You know, like you can't guarantee anybody any certainty about when anything can be done, you know. So that's the other critical issue. So master planning and Department of Environment, I think that's, if we help start to address those two things, I think we're on the right track. Thank you.
Nakakal, I think you also had a question related to the Lambasa master planning. Do you want to talk more about that? And probably, you know, since PS Public Works is also on the call.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, there's tourism in the north is fantastic, but you know, and it's all the thinking is concentrated around Sabah, but there's no real thinking about how you're going to support it commercially. You know, the main commercial center is in Lambasa. And at the moment, everything has to transit through Sabah. I mean, 70% of all the freight that goes to the north goes to Lambasa. Lambasa's got an international port that can handle big ships, but yet you can't even move containerized freight into there or out of there. You know, the cost there is it's so cost prohibitive. You're not going to have any decent development unless you address that issue. I mean, I bought a small 1 acre piece of land on the foreshore in Malau with the plan to just to move some rocks. It would have cost me $5,000 to build a small barge ramp in Malau. It's taken me 3 years and probably 30 or 40 grand in EIA to get through the Department of Environment. I mean, that's a personal difficulty, but at the end of the day, you're not going to have any sort of significant development in the north without addressing the commercial and freight issue. And then if you start bringing commercial freight into Lambasa, then you should take the opportunity to master plan Lambasa, because that's a perfect corridor that goes from Malau down into where the main commercial centers are spreading over the bridge away from the flood-free areas. So this now is the opportunity. There's plenty of flat land. You know, there's plenty of renewable energy. There's a ton of solar. There's geothermal, obviously. There's potential for hydro. The problem with EFL, I think, is that they would be assessing the economic viability on what's on the ground now. They're not planning for future capacity. If you plan for future capacity, if you just say this is how the future commercial area, the development's gonna look like, then EFL should be able to plan to provide the necessary renewable energy power provisions up there. But that's the reason nobody's pursued geothermal or any other renewable energy, because they think that what they have to do is get that renewable energy back to VT level. But really, if you have the power capacity, you can start to develop all of that, and commercial opportunity and grow the north. I mean, at the moment, you can't even get enough kerosene or aviation fuel up there. So it might be fine to increase the passenger movement to the north, but I think you're going to be limited by the amount of kerosene storage for all the additional flights. Yeah, I guess that's kind of my main concern. And I think that's the main opportunity with master planning the north, and especially Lambasa. I mean, everybody's master planning Sabah, but Lambasa is where the commercial opportunity is, and it's going to be the commercial heart for the north.
Okay, Nakakal. I think I'll give this time just for the panelists to probably respond to that. I know PS Shaheen has joined us, so I'll give PS Shaheen and then probably PS Taitusi, and I know we still have Kamal from FRA, CEO of FRA, and as well as Esther as well from Investment Fiji. Naka PS.
Naka, so I have another engagement at 11:30, so I was just gonna, escape all this tough questioning. But no, I don't have all the answers, but I acknowledge the issues that have been pointed out by Cynthia and also Carl with regards to some of the challenges that we have with agencies, especially with regards to doing business and licensing approvals, etc. And we have harped on about doing business, how we are sort of using BIS Fiji and trying to digitize with regards to starting a business. We started with investment Fiji reforms, and then ROC reforms, and then tax reforms. There are still challenges, and we have a lot more to go through. And as far as the reform team is concerned, the reform committee is concerned, they have a lot on the agenda, looking at agencies like AMSEF, looking at approvals like alcohol licensing, hotel licensing. So these are the things that we need to address. In addition, the Minister for Trade, Cooperatives and SMEs is very interested in sort of setting up a high-level cabinet subcommittee on investment facilitation and ease of doing business. So this will be looked at a very high level. And there are, of course, challenges with the government's digitalization program. With regards to Northern Development, I totally agree with Carl. It needs to be holistic, not just looking at Sabu Sabu Blue Town that that gets a lot of sort of publicity because solid waste management, connectivity, the ports connection, getting the aviation fuel, getting just basic freight into Vanua Levu is a Vanua Levu problem. It's not a Sabu Sabu problem, although the concentration of hotels are in Sabu Sabu. Looking at the airports, so what this IFC study will do is look at Vanua Levu holistically, look at infrastructure issues holistically. The Ministry of Tourism Civil Aviation is the sort of the partnering, the implementing arm with other ministries like Ministry of Infrastructure, FRA. These will be the partners. So there'll be sort of this cake of 42 million US will be divided into feasibility studies, identifying so maybe, for example, whilst improving the passenger terminals of airports in Lambasa and Sabu Sabu, we all know that cannot be, those airports cannot sort of cater for future growth of connectivity that we want for Vanua Levu. So there needs to be a feasibility done to look at a site for another airport that can cater for this growth. Similarly, with other infrastructure needs like solid waste management, ports, etc. So this project will look at those sort of infrastructure gaps, but on a holistic northern basis, including Vanua Levu and Ratuma and Taveuni and other sort of that area as well. So yeah, and with regards to all the other questions related to sort of EFL and FRA, we will answer that. This plan, like I said, needs to be cognizant of infrastructure development plans of the various technical agencies, and it is also needs to take into account that we cannot have growth in tourism, diversification like Cynthia was talking about in tourism, and attracting the Generation X and the newer sort of traveling market that we see is now traveling without understanding our infrastructure constraints and being able to then plan for that future growth. So I think those were the sort of the points I wanted to make very broadly. We acknowledge that there are issues, but this is what this plan aims to do, to ensure that these issues are addressed as we plan for the growth of our tourism for the next 10 to 15 years. So thank you, moderators. But if I haven't answered anything, just put it on the chat, and we'll ensure that all these answers are provided, or possible answers where it can be. And I also would like to sort of mention to Cynthia that if you can just some of your specific problems that you were having problems with regards to approval agencies, if you can send those across to Jacinta and myself, and we will sort of, I mean, if the agencies, I understand if the agencies are working efficiently, no one needs to intervene. But in this case, we acknowledge there are issues, so we can at least on your behalf try to sort of resolve some of these issues. And if you can please send us some you know, what issues you have, we will try to resolve it as well. Vinak.
Not PS Shaheen. PS Taitusi, would you like to comment on Carl Probert's comments?
Yeah, thank you, panel. I can only echo the sentiments that have been spoken, given by PS Sanini. One needs to understand. Just recently, we have just passed the road from number 1 to Rikeki. I think last 3 or 4 years back, we passed that road. Before that road was a gravel road. So from number 1 up, right up to Rikeki, that area has been passed. So that is an indicator that there is a policy or a look-north policy to improve the overall north, including Lambasa and South. Freight movement in the local freight movement has sort of improved because of the new road. So, in order for things in terms of infrastructure to move ahead, while we have the national infrastructure, for example, the grid, the parceling of the roads and all that, individual tourism projects that needs to be included as part of the program could be something that could be highlighted to be included. But generally speaking, from a national infrastructure perspective, take for example the stretch from number 1 to Rikeki. That area has been sealed. And that is an improvement. And you've got tourism areas in that area where the next step could be taken by Tourism PG or whoever the responsible agency in terms of investment PG to sort of sell these areas because of the green connections that is now available, and then the good roads that is now available. Again, I reiterate the point. It's not something that can be done in 1 year or 2 years. It needs a proper planning. It needs to look at the returns that will be coming from these areas. Then the investment needs to come, especially on infrastructure projects, because these are very big projects. While we already have low-hanging fruits, for example, areas that have already been improved, as I mentioned, from rural infrastructure to modern urban infrastructure. This is an area where tourism could be kept, and you know, where we can organize marketing, we can organize things like where revenue could be generated from tourism. In terms of pushing infrastructure, for example, to areas where there is still needs for infrastructure, proper planning needs to happen, and that's where the Ministry of Public Works and the utilities come in. There is a need for master planning, and it will take time. It will take time. It will take spending. For example, feasibility study itself will cost, and then we can organize in the future. But the northern division, in terms of south, because of the availability of tourism already there, those areas have already been improved. We still need the wastewater treatments in those areas. For example, the north, the economy needs to be set up. But the first step of infrastructure development, in terms of improving the access from, for example, from Notobi to number 1 and from number 1 to Lambasa, that has already been on my cycle. Thank you.
Sorry, before I just give the floor to Kamal, can I just ask Peter? Sorry, you had your hand raised. You can pose your question now.
Yes, thank you. Hi, my name is Peter Sipelli. I operate a really brand new company called Guided Tours Suva. We do guided walks of the city. We've only been open for the last 3 months. I think some of the issues that I wanted to raise is we are opening up tours to Levuka. And I think this is to both Investment Fiji and Mr. Taitusi, the PS for Public Works. Operating Levuka is really difficult because the boats are few and far between getting there. And for a fast turnaround, quick visit to a location like Levuka makes it difficult because the boat leaves 6 o'clock in the morning and gets back at 6 o'clock in the evening. It makes it difficult for people, especially the large cruise ships that are actually interested in that experience. And I find that boat travel out there is pretty difficult. Other issues out there in Overlau is Digicel basically doesn't work in some areas, and actually in most areas. So for us at Guided Walks, we just had to flip to Vodafone because it works best there. And also Levuka as an experience is a pretty sad place. There isn't enough shops open. There is actually only 2 operational cafe businesses that serve food, but really mediocre kind of food. And as an experience destination, there needs to be more things happening there. And as a Suva resident, talking about issues in Levuka, it seems kind of out of place, because I think these issues need to come from the people that is based out there. Also, as a retail experience, they kind of have one shop that's operational that just sells Zulus and really old t-shirts. As an experience destination, the place isn't ready for visitors to get out there. And it seems a really bleak presentation of place. And also for me to do the tours out there, it then becomes kind of this small business kind of plan is to set up what the historical place looked like. So what I'm doing is working with National Archives and National Trust to be able to hold pictures or drawings of what that initial town looks like. But from my perspective, really that should come from Levuka to show us what that place kind of looks like. And I think there needs to be more focus in Overlau for tourism experiences and actually for it to exist and work as a destination. It's bleak out there and there needs to be kind of more things happening there. I think for the other issue I have is I started opening up tours to Naili Lili out in Rewa. And if you go out there, there is no kind of price control on any of those water taxis. And each time you encounter water taxis, the price kind of varies. So what I'm doing is working with the Catholic Church there for us to be able to use their boat at a premium price. And so for me, I have to kind of jack up my rates to ensure that I can use a proper fiberglass boat instead of one of those wooden punts. And I keep wondering, like, what is the policies covering those water taxis? Are they registered? Is there some kind of price control system? Because out there it's kind of free for all. And I think, I go out there a lot, and so I have my own contacts there. But again, as a destination, I think it's quite important for that to be a little bit more kind of, not policed is the wrong term, but it needs to be more regulated in terms of like, they need to have like more things like safety jackets. I find that I had to work with my own friends to get the safety jackets and give it to the Catholic Church for my guests to be able to use, because nobody has it out there. And I think that's just something that kind of needs to be addressed. The Suva tours is really quite easy. However, the most interesting places in the city is the market, that surrounding area, the bus station, and across from the bus station, it's called Yatulau Arcade. Those provide the most interesting Fiji spaces. The rest of the city, you're looking at downtown, which is like Victoria Parade, that's pretty easy. But Suva as a city, that market bus station area is incredible as an experience. However, lack of police officers there. And because not many tourists go there, when I show up with a group, there's a lot of attention, a lot of people screaming bula. And I think, but it just seems slightly uncomfortable for me, because then just crime, in terms of pickpocketers, I feel like is a bit of a concern. And so what I've been doing is just creating better relationships with SEC and then the police However, there just needs to be more cops on site when there's a tugboat in town, because they're not there in that part of the city. They're all out in front of the big fancy hotels downtown in Victoria Parade. They're not policing those interesting areas. And as a tourist, you want to see the market, you want to see the bus station, but the cops are not there. And so for me, I find that that's a big concern. I also wanted to partner up with Gangi Mai Bike. They're a bike company that do bike hires, but again, there aren't any bike lanes in the city, and with the way the taxi drivers drive in the city, it's dangerous. And so for that to be a byproduct of the tours to partner up with a local company, and again, we're both tiny, small, fresh out of the box companies. There just needs to be, bike lanes and more signs, to say watch out for cyclists, and that isn't available in the city. I've also been working very closely with National Trust, because this is, National Trust is the governing body that is supposed to be taking care of these heritage sites, and there's 30 in the city. They are a powerless organization with no actual power. So it means our heritage sites are at threat. If big business buys a heritage site building that isn't a government site, they can just deface the building and do whatever they want, like they've done to the Metropole building in the city. It just means like small.
Peter, sorry, can I just ask you to wrap up quickly? Just have a few more minutes left.
I think that's it. I think my last point is really about National Trust, and kind of I work with them quite closely. They're experienced in the tour. When I end the tour at the museum, they come and kind of do a wrap up. But I think for them as an agency, as a government agency, they have no teeth or power to protect the heritage sites that we have in the building. And that's all for me. I'm going to leave because I got a tour in the next 20 minutes. Thank you for the time here today.
Naka, Peter. Naka. Thank you, Peter. We'll be consolidating all these comments. Thanks so much for sharing that. And the ministry will be able to also, they're also there if you want to send an email directly to the team as well. Naka, Peter.
Thank you.
I'll jump back quickly on just going back on Carl's a comment. I'll just give it to Kamal if you want to talk. I know Carl's talked about the Lambasa master planning, and is very interested in the jetty development side, especially in Mombasa.
So for us at the moment, the planning part, it's all with the Lambasa Town Council and the Department of Town and Country Planning, who does the planning for the entire area, and then we enter that site to do the construction. So majority of the planning is done by them in terms of how they want the area to be subdivided. So, however, just to add some stuff to what PS Titus here said. So we're designing actually two jetties, Numbuwalu jetty and the Savu Savu jetty. They all will move from their existing locations. We're putting we've got feasibility studies going on now, and we've got indications that it'll move from where it is at the moment. Savu Savu, I think, moving towards the Walanga Bay area, and it is going to be phased operation starting from small craft, and then the way the design will go is we should be able to have, if sustainable development is done, we should be able to have the larger boats, the tourist boats, docking at the location without any issue. And similarly for Numbuwalu. So that's happening now. And there is about connection, the Buddha Bay road, it's already been sealed. So I think hotels are coming there. So the seal extension part of it planned to happen, and along the Kumbulau and Wailevu West Coast. So we're doing seal extension of that also planned to come and connect onto the Numbuwalu Road. So that portion of the Wailevu can be open for tourism also. That's together. So the present government, they're very interested in that part of seal extension. So I believe there's going to be a lot of traction going forward in the next financial year.
Nak Kamal. Thank you for that. I think the other panelists as well. I know Peter had raised some good points as well. Esther, would you like to comment on, some of the comments coming in from Carl, and I know there's comments as well from Peter in terms of Levuka, investment opportunities, improving experiences, and is there some plans for investment at Fiji as well in that space?
Thank you, Lisi. Just for Carl, just for your information on your comments with regards to the Department of Environment, we have received a lot of complaints and issues with regards to the Department of Environment, which Investment Fiji is aware of. And we've taken this on board with our Honorable Minister for Trade. He is very much aware and has actually experienced how difficult the Department of Environment has been in terms of their approval processes. So this is something that's being addressed at the ministerial level. So hopefully in a few days or a few weeks, there could be an outcome in terms of any changes that would happen. So for now, we have highlighted a lot of the issues with regards to investors or projects. Yes, it is a concern. It has been a concern for all projects with regards to applications submitted for EIA, even for screening. So those challenges and issues have been taken on board and have been highlighted to the Honorable Minister. And he's very much interested in addressing these issues. So hopefully we'd see some changes in the coming weeks and the coming months. I hope that would address your concerns. But for Peter, yes, I really agree with what Peter has highlighted with regards to his business. In terms of investment in Levuka, we have not seen any major investment project that has come through Investment Fiji or any interest to invest in Levuka. But we have discussed this with the Suva Chamber of Commerce. I think a lot of the issues that he's highlighted, a lot of the problems are taken on board with the Suva Chamber of Commerce in terms of how best to represent Suva as also a tourism destination. This is something, as opposed to looking at Suva as a business district only. So this is something that the Suva Chamber of Commerce, the president, had highlighted to Investment Fiji. And that's something that's still, we're still working on. But in terms of a lot of the issues he's faced with the water taxis and the regulatory bodies, I think this is something we could look into. Maybe if Peter would want to meet with the team and be able to discuss this further, we could see how best we could be able to facilitate, especially since he's just a new operator. We could be able to then guide him, be able to assist on how best we could promote his business maybe, and also assist in terms of all these regulatory issues that he's facing. So that's probably it from our side, from Investment Fiji.
Naka Esther, thank you for that. I think we'll just go on to our last question on adventure tourism, adventure sports opportunities. I think this was brought up by Timothy, Andrew, and Emma. Would the panelists like to talk about just the adventure sports opportunities and any specific infrastructure needs for this market? We have only a few more minutes, just probably the panelists, Esther, Kamal, I think PS Taitusi just before, oh, he's had to run off. Thank you, PS Taitusi. We also have Cynthia as well. Do you would like to just comment or give some comments to that?
Just one from me. So I know these mountain bikes and everything that they need to reach up to the mountains, and that is what we're doing now in terms of doing the seal extension up to the mountains, especially those roads in Western Division, the Nosori Highlands Road. The a Wailoa Road from eastern side, and also the roads going up from Valley Road. So all these seal extensions will actually help in promoting those kind of sports, because there's already tracks up there on the mountains that they can be used and for this attraction. And similarly, for One Road Level 2, that we are now going to do seal extension all the way around, just similar to the loop that we have got Kings and Queens Road in Level. One Road Level will spin around that Wailevu West Coast, and Nateo West Coast to come and join back in again to Wanikoro. So once that gets sealed up, then people have the access to go into the mountains from there on.
Kamal, Esther.
Thank you, Lisi. Yes, just as what I'd mentioned before in the presentation, we have actually received a lot of interest in terms of recreational activities. Companies that have come into expressing their interest in investing these opportunities. So I think, again, it is a collaborative approach. I think we need to work as what CEO FRA has mentioned, and also for PS. Since the interest is there, we still have a lot of work to do in the background. And I think with what we've discussed, even with the Line Ministry, on how to actually move these projects forward. This is an initiative that we're trying to work on to try and assist these projects to tap into this market for recreational spaces, recreational activities. It's an investment opportunity that we are trying to promote, but we still need a bit more work to do into that, to go into that. So from our side, we will work with this with other government departments on this, and we hope that at least we could move forward, because the mountain bike trek company that has expressed interest, it's based in the West. So our regional team is currently assisting him on setting up his project. But really, if we look at developing this sort of a business activity, it really can go a long way for a lot of our other projects, other companies who would want to also tap into this market. So from our side, we will try and work with the other government departments to try and take this forward.
Naka Esther. We run out of time at the moment, so probably we'll just give it time. If there's any other last questions, probably got only 3 minutes left. I think the see Carl's hand raised. Just a really quick comment, and then if there's nothing, any questions that you want to raise or comments, last questions.
Just quickly, can we just make sure that any new roads, wherever they go, we think about the solid waste management and collection from these areas? You know, you're basically providing direct access into areas that never had so much commercial products and packaging, and then all of a sudden they're left with a whole lot of this rubbish that they've got no means of bringing back. So can that be a consideration? Can we see what plans are coming in future? I know FRA is talking about new roads, the jetty locations, exactly what's coming, but I don't think anybody's really seen any of this. So how can we react, and how can we plan? It's just unreasonable to just build it and then expect everyone to react. At least give us some sort of heads up. And I'm hoping that we're thinking about separating passenger and cargo transport, because that's two completely separate needs and requirements. You're not going to get any efficiency if you keep bundling passengers, cargo together in one vessel.
Nakaka.
Can I respond to Carl in terms of the jetties? So our feasibility studies are still ongoing, and there has been quite a few stakeholder engagement that has been done, and we have advertised for public to come and join us in the discussions. So I'll make sure that the next public engagement in terms of the jetties and our roads happen, I'll certainly let the team know to contact yourself now, just to be around there to get an idea. All right, thanks, mate.
Naka Kamal. I think there's no other comments. Any last remarks from the rest of the panelists? Kamal, Esther, Cynthia,
No, thanks, I'm good. Thank you.
Naka Kamal,
Naka Lisi, all good from my side.
Naka Esther, Cynthia,
Thank you, Lucy, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Naka Cynthia. Well, that's all the time that we have for you for the Q&A. I'd just like to say thank you so much for the fantastic panel of experts that we've had here today, and thank you all for your wonderful questions. Give the floor back to Jyotishna.
Vinakavakalevu, everyone, especially to our panelists. And I guess there's a lot to take away from today's session. Integrated approaches to future development through information and resource sharing, supported by concrete actions through public and private sector collaborations. I guess this will not only drive inclusive, sustainable development, but increase innovation essential for tourism and wider investment in the economy. So colleagues, this brings us to the end of the session. Our next session will be on Wednesday, 1st February, and it will be on tourism as a preferred employer. So on behalf of the Ministry of Tourism and the Fiji government, please allow me to thank everyone for joining us today. And we look forward to your further support for the upcoming PPTs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.